As well.
With me now to review the newspapers, we've got the Times columnist Tim Montgomery, and we've got the broadcaster Anne Diamond, who feels as if she's going back in time.
Last time I did an outside broadcast outside St Paul's Cathedral was for the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Amazing. How old am I?
Amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, part of history which today, whether some people like it or whether they don't, is an historical event as well. Tim, what Prime Minister isn't controversial or divisive?
Tony Blair said, didn't he, if you decide, you divide. And I don't see how you could possibly be an effective Prime Minister without making almost as many enemies as you do friends.
Let's go now to the Daily Mail. And all this week, Robin Harris and his biography of Mrs Thatcher has been serialised by them. What have you drawn from that today?
Very interesting. I suppose he's been able to give an overview. He was her confidant and friend for many years. And today he looks at her legacy. He says her legacy is all around us, but she has no worthy heir. Perhaps she didn't need one. She slew the dragons, and now the meek can inherit the earth. And it's interesting, when you look at she apparently enjoyed being the only woman in cabinet. She liked being surrounded by men. She liked feeling she was the only woman who'd made it. And when you look at an awful lot of the men who might well have succeeded her, they sort of fell like chess pieces. Cecil Parkinson resigned because of the scandal. John Moore's health wasn't up to it. Norman Tebbit left government care for his wife. One by one, they fell. Yeah. Her natural successors.
How things change in those days. You get Cecil Parkinson resigning because he has an affair with his secretary. Yeah. You get John Prescott doing a similar thing. He's Deputy Prime Minister. Doesn't seem to...
Times change,
They change. Right, we go, and also in the Mirror, all this talk about who's coming, who's not coming. It was very interesting. Who's there? I noticed on the guest list, my favourite classical singer, Catherine Jenkins, is there.
Yes.
I wonder, is she working or is she just attending?
No, I think she's just attending.
Wonder why?
I don't know. I suppose it depends how many cocktail parties you went to at number 10. I suppose at the time.
But she was
a different generation. Yes,
yeah. Interesting one. What have you got?
It's down to who you know, Eamon.
We obviously don't know.
No, we don't know the right people. We're stuck outside. Yes, so the Mirror looks at not for turning up is the headline. And all of the people who were invited, I mean, every living US president was invited. None of them are coming.
Yeah. Well, you know, not this week, obviously, the American administration can be argued they're a bit busy, but the declines come in, the refusals come in before the boss.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm slightly disappointed with that, actually. I think President Obama paid a very generous tribute to Margaret Thatcher when the news came through. But
she was Prime Minister many years ago. He won't see it as being terribly relevant.
She was, but we have a piece in the Times.
I would have thought that whether you're head of state, whether you knew her or not, there was an obligation to pay respect.
Yes, I mean, many of the European leaders aren't coming. It's very interesting, this list, I mean, that's what the Mirror's looked at there. The list of people who aren't coming, Hollande isn't coming, Merkel's not coming. They're sending people, but it's not the same, is it?
Are you going to?
I am going, yes. I'm very honoured to go.
He's got an invitation which tells him that he mustn't wear his ceremonial sort of state.
Okay, and
I've left it at home.
Okay, fair enough. Right, Tim, let's turn to other events and the Boston bombings, and of course this is the other...
I don't know whether the camera can see this, but
poor child.
The tragedy of the Boston bombing, I don't think that little smile of that 8-year-old boy, there's a picture in one of the papers where he makes a sign saying no more hurting people, just peace, and I think for something that was going on in his school. And
he was killed. His sister, who's standing next to him, has lost a leg. His mother is still in hospital undergoing brain surgery, so she was obviously very badly injured. Older brother was all right, and of course father, who was actually running the marathon, was all right.
And
how terribly affected that whole family.
For what reason?
No, all we know is that at the moment it looks as though they were IED-type bombs made in pressure cookers, packed with nails and ball bearings, deliberately designed to maim. It seems so cruelly ironic that it's almost as though they were designed to take your legs off at a marathon.
Other fatalities in the Alps, this bus crash.
Yesterday's bus crash, I mean, there's such amazing pictures in today's papers because luckily the 47 survivors, everyone everyone survived, obviously took pictures as soon as they were out of danger, and you can see these incredible pictures. And the front page of the Daily Mirror is really dramatic, saying what an inferno it was. This coach coming down the hill, apparently it was just approaching a notorious hairpin bend, you know, these mountainous hairpin bends. And a witness said everybody on board clearly knew something was wrong. And many were even flinging themselves out of the coach before it actually hit the cliff. And the driver apparently shouted, something's wrong. And everybody's thinking it must simply be the brakes. Maybe the brakes simply weren't working. And he was able to shout a warning. And incredibly, 47 people survived. Incredibly.
I'm a job to giving one up. And when it comes to letters of resignation, if you've ever thought about it, I bet you haven't thought about doing it like this.
No. This is an airport worker called Chris Holmes. We don't think he's anywhere.
Well, it could be my cousin, because I do have a Chris Holmes
well, there
cousin.
You are. He was an airport worker, but he decided once he'd had a baby and started to look at life differently, he thought, I want to do as a career what I enjoy doing, and he enjoys making cakes. So he decided to resign on a cake. And when you think of it, resigning on a sponge like that, in icing, is pretty clever. He's very
Is it a good letter of resignation?
It's a nice letter. He says, today is my 31st birthday and I've recently become a father, and I realise now how precious life is and how important it is to spend my time doing something that makes me happy. For that reason, I hereby give notice of my resignation. This is all in icing. In order that I may devote my time and energy to my family and to my cake business.
Well,
thanks for getting the website, of course, on the cake, so that will be a very well visited
Very well
website.
done. Very well done. Thank you for getting your teeth into those stories. Events really building around St Paul's Cathedral in preparation for the funeral of Margaret Thatcher. I've got Tim Montgomery, the Times columnist, and we've got Anne Diamond, the broadcaster, and a man with a very noisy buggy pulling those suitcases. But it's cobblestones here, and they've been sanding them for the horses and the wheels that go over. And Anne, you were saying just how impressed you are by the City of London police who are beginning to...
We've been noticing the City of London police who have the sort of slightly old-fashioned style helmet, and they're in their dress uniform. They look very, very smart, many of them with police medals and everything, and the white gloves. Don't they look smart?
It's great to see policemen out of their day glow tops.
Yes,
that they all
it is
seem to wear.
And where do you stand on protest and the right to protest at a time and a place for protest?
A time and a place is a very interesting one. I do believe in the right to protest, and there will be lots of protests today. How close they'll be, especially given the added security now post-Boston Marathon, I don't know how close any of the protesters will be allowed to get. But I do very, very strongly support their right to protest. Because Margaret Thatcher was there.
So people travelling from all sorts of places to be here. And as regards the route itself, I mean, you've been looking at that and stuff.
Well, yes, a lot of the newspapers have got guides on what happens next. I mean, what's happening at the moment is the coffin is still in the chapel of St Mary Undercroft at Westminster, and that won't leave until 10 o'clock. And then it'll go through all along the Strand, and it'll be when it gets to St Clement Danes Church at the Aldwych, just that away. Then they transfer the coffin from a hearse to a gun carriage and the horses. And I think from that moment, as you were saying, Eamon, it'll start to get very poignant, because this is British ceremony at its best, in a way, very old-fashioned sense of ceremony. At that stage, it almost becomes a state funeral, doesn't it? And then it'll make its way here, down Fleet Street, ironically, almost. Fleet Street occasionally gave her quite a hard time. She'll come down Fleet Street.
Are there any newspapers left of Fleet Street now?
I don't think there's one.
There's lots of cafes and restaurants and shops where the paper offices
And the forecast, which I know you'll be interested, having seen you freeze at quite a few outside broadcasts, Eamon. Cloudy start, chance of drizzle first thing, yes. Becoming brighter as the morning goes on. About politics going on, even despite what's happening today. Eric Pickles, they're saying, has been forced into a humiliating U-turn over his plans to allow, basically, us to build anything on the back of our houses without having to go through the planning permission process. It was said that we could build anything up to about 26-foot extensions, and of course this caused a lot of controversies, because people say that would allow extreme, awful eyesores, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about your neighbour building something. Well, it looks as though that is one step too far for most people, and he's now being forced into a U-turn. We don't know what sort of compromise he's going to come to, but 26 foot is at least 1 foot too far.